I'm going to go to my third story, and this one is one that's I'm really passionate about because, again, I worked in education and I have a strong resentment for charter schools. So I saw this the other day. I don't like it, but here we go. Asian parents fed up with public education want more charter schools. Let me go ahead and make this larger for you. So here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Boop, 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 boop. In 2010, the powerful documentary Waiting for Superman exposed public schools for the failure factories they are and forged lasting awareness that for Black families, the only hope for a decent education is winning the charter school lottery. That was the early days of charter schools, but the dynamic of racial partisan politics back then cuts even now. Michelle Rhee, daughter of Korean immigrants, appointed by reformist Black Mayor Adrian Fenty to save poor Black families in D.C., is obstructed at every turn and ultimately defeated by Randy Weingarten, white boss of a union powerful with Democrats. Although Rhee achieved dramatic student gains, the union denied Fenty re-election and Rhee resigned. For Black families, Rhee and Fenty would not be their Superman. The rescue lay with charter schools. Let me go ahead and scroll down here. Today, 12 years later, it's no longer newsworthy that charter schools are educational lifelines for Black families. What is newsworthy is that Asians are beginning to view charter schools as educational lifelines too. Why? Let's humor critics who say charter schools get amazing academic outcomes only because the parents of their children care a lot about education. The Asian parents are ideal for charter schools. Even ex-mayor Bill de Blasio finally conceded that Asian parents care a lot about education after he attacked Asians relentlessly all throughout his second term for basically caring a lot about education. Wow. Bottom line, charter schools will deliver results, and that's what Asian parents want. This example is typical in South Brooklyn, where many Chinese live. Success Academy Bensonhurst trounces PS 97 nearby in proficiency rates in both math, 100% versus 61%, and language arts, 93% versus 65%. I can't play that Superman trailer for you because I will get a copyright for that. Yes, the Brooklyn School of Inquiry, BSI, a city school near Success Academy Bensonhurst, also outperforms PS 97. Let's go down here. While city schools give up educating, they have launched increasingly grandiose diversions. They take on trauma-informed pedagogy, socio-psychiatric therapy, gender choice advocacy, race-centric indoctrination, and parental displacement, but can't even keep gangs and weapons out of schools. Asian families know about the political brainwashing, alienation of parental affection, and racial quotas. Now, with decent education disappearing, they see city schools as impossible. Let me pop out for just a second. I have something I want to say about this before we go a little bit further. They just said in the article that they see city schools as, not a possibility, basically, right? But why is that? They don't say this in the article, so I'm going to go ahead and tell you. I talked about this weekend as well. The reason why a lot of the schools, the public schools in the cities, are underfunded and under-resourced in the urban areas, you have to go all the way back to what happened with white flight. When white families left the city and moved to the suburbs, they took their money with them. And because of housing discrimination and because of redlining, because of redlining, Black families were not allowed into those suburban communities. This actually goes all the way back to the New Deal, because the banks would not give loans to those Black families so that they could buy those homes. These are the parts of the New Deal that did not benefit Black people. A lot of people walk around saying they're FDR Democrat, not really knowing what that meant in reference to Black people. So, when the money left the cities, when they took their money with them to the suburbs, the schools in the cities became underfunded and under-resourced because the funding is based on property taxes. Most people that live in the urban areas do not own their housing. Most people that live in Boston don't own their apartment. It's too expensive. You want to buy a house in Boston, that's like $1 million. So most people don't own anything. So obviously, you're not going to have as much for the property taxes. That is why the schools in those urban areas are underfunded and under-resourced, because they are still being funded by property taxes and the money is not there. So in order to fix this problem, what needs to happen is public schools need to be funded with federal dollars, not by property taxes. It should not come from the state. That's one way around this, I think. Now, there's more to this story. Let's get into it. So what has happened over the years? Somebody came along and decided to create charter schools so that those kids in those communities have the opportunity to receive a better education, but just not at the school in their neighborhood because the school was underfunded, under-resourced. I have a big problem with charter schools. Here's the problem. A lot of these charter schools, in order for those students to get in, they have to test into those schools. You have to get a certain score to get into the school. It's the same way here in Massachusetts, by the way. Not everybody gets to go to Boston Latin. So they have to test into those schools. Most kids in those neighborhoods don't meet the score requirement to get into the school. So if you don't have the score requirement to get into the school, you are now stuck at the under-resourced school in your neighborhood. How is that fair? So instead of increasing charter schools, why can't you just take the same lessons, the same academic curriculum that you're teaching at the charter schools and teach it in the public school system? Why not? Why not fix the schools in Roxbury and Dorchester instead of putting these kids on a bus and putting them on the highway to go to school in Newton where all the rich people are? Why can't you just fix the school in the community? That's the problem. The charter schools take the best students from those schools and bring them in. If you are not one of the top performing students, you do not have a chance to get in. That is not right. And it's almost like you are basically being punished because you are poor. Because you are poor, you don't get to have a decent education. Who even thought that this was a good idea? So imagine if you're one of those kids, you're one of the Black kids growing up in Roxbury, you get into that charter school, but your friends and your neighbors don't. So now you're getting on the bus to go to the charter school every day. You still got to come back home to your neighborhood and face your friends that got left behind. I don't like it. I don't like it one bit. And they continue to build them. Every time I turn around, there's another charter school popping up. Just fix the damn schools. This is stupid. And those schools, academically, yes, the students do really well. They prepare them a lot of times for college prep. So they get the college preparation at the charter schools. Why can't you have college preparation at the public schools? No one should have to test into that. This is just stupid. So that's the problem that I have with these charter schools. It is not fair. It is wrong. And more people, I wish more people would talk about it, especially those that work in education. It is not right to leave those kids behind. What do? I'm going to go back into the article. Asian parents embrace cultural values practiced in the best charter networks but denounced by city schools. They prefer hard work over entitlement, agency over victimhood, achievement over narcissism, empowerment over fragility. As a result, there's rising Asian interest in charter schools. From 2018 to 2021, Asian enrollment in Success Academy Bensonhurst went up by 46%, from 15 to 22%. And at Success Academy Union Square by 52%, from 19 to 29%. But there's an obstacle. Of course, there is. Waiting for Superman climaxes with the heart-wrenching scene of families in packed auditoriums watching their charter school lotteries. As numbers are drawn, one by one lucky student explodes with joy. Other kids look in agony at the digital display, counting the remaining seats. 3, 2, 1, 0. Tears flow, heads drop. Of the 5 families followed in the documentary, only one draws a seat. Superman fails to come in for 4. There aren't enough charter schools, and I have to pop back out. That is not the solution. This kind of reminds me of the same philosophy that people are saying, like, we don't have enough progressives in the Democratic Party. We don't have enough progressives in Congress. We need more. Instead of addressing the actual system that's in place that causes us to not get anything anyway. That's what this reminds me of. The answer is not to create more charter schools. The answer is to fix the schools that you have in the public education system. The answer is to pay teachers an actual living wage. I know teachers in this country making under $30,000 a year. How is that even possible? How is that possible in a field that requires you to have a college degree? That doesn't make any sense. So the answer should not be we need more charter schools. You just need to fix the damn schools that you have. And nobody wants to do it. I've walked into schools in Boston. I couldn't believe this was a freaking school. I'm looking around and I'm like, is this a school or a war zone? Get the cops out of the schools. You don't need police officers at schools. I'm walking into classrooms where the doors are barely hanging on the hinges. I'm walking into bathrooms where the stall has no door in the woman's bathroom. Where's all the money going? We can build new stadiums, right? Bring in more sports teams. What? We can build entertainment plazas. We can constantly build new condo buildings. We got all the money when it comes to real estate. We can invest in that. But when it comes to the public education system, in Boston in particular, they don't want to invest in it. And it's not just Boston, it's other cities around this country as well. But you shouldn't have to go live in the suburbs to get a decent education. You shouldn't have to hopefully win this educational lottery so that you can get a decent education. We shouldn't have to build more charter schools so that these kids can get a decent education. It's a problem. I don't like it, and I disagree with it. When I read this article, I was like, are you kidding me? Fix the system. You fix the system, you fix the schools. But it's not fair to those kids who were left behind. And if you haven't seen that documentary, Waiting for Superman, I highly recommend that you watch it, because it's appalling to see those kids cry, to see the family members cry because they weren't chosen, they couldn't get in. Now in Boston, you have to test into those schools. If you want to get into Boston Latin, even if you live next to Boston Latin, you can't just go to Boston Latin. Isn't that something? Isn't that funny? You live right down the street from Boston Latin and you can't go to the damn school because you have to test into it. Give everybody a decent education. Kids shouldn't have to go to a private school, a charter school. Just give everybody the same decent education. Solve that problem right there. I'm going to come out now. I get heated over that, you guys. I'm sorry. I get fired up over that because if you look up the top 10 schools in Massachusetts, most of the schools in the top 10 are now charter schools. That wasn't the case when I moved here 10 and a half years ago. That's how things have changed. A kid said, Sabby, it is true. Asian culture does do a better job on focusing and driving their children to focus on getting into college. It's innately built into their culture. And there's nothing wrong with that. But these damn charter schools have got to go. It's just a problem. I feel so bad for those kids. I really do. Cryptician said, education is Sabby's specialty. This is personal to her. Yeah, it's very personal because I've been in those schools. I've seen them. I've seen what these kids have to go to and what they have to go through. It's ridiculous. You have kids in Dorchester, they have to take 3 buses just to get to school because the city doesn't want to pay to put a subway station in the poor neighborhoods. What? They don't want to pay to put a subway station in parts of Dorchester, the poorer parts of Dorchester. They don't want to put one there. So these kids got to take 3 buses just to get to the damn school. Thanks so much for the super chat, Delthea. Save your narrative. Poor school movies perpetuate and excuse bad education policy. People wind up believing a lie and not seeing the truth. Right. And that's the thing that I want people to understand. I don't want you to walk away from the stream thinking, yeah, we need more charter schools. No, that's not how you fix this problem. It's really not fair. It really isn't. A kid said, Sabby, I worked at a charter school and saw firsthand how effective they were, but it was to the detriment of the community as the school could only serve a small number of students. That's the problem. That's why they won't let everybody come in. It's just, it's terrible. The public education system in this country needs a lot of work. And I'm saying that as someone who went to international school abroad. The public education system in this country needs a lot of work. Yes, Delthea, you fix public schools by fixing public schools, period. What? Sebastian said, talk about student lunch debt, Sabby. That's another problem that people can run into is that some people may not realize this, but for some students who have like free lunch or free breakfast through the school, for some of them, that's the only meal they'll get to eat that day. And I think it's one of those things like if you haven't worked in these education systems, you may not be aware, you may not see that, but it's just a reality. But one of the things that will happen is that sometimes students don't have lunch money, right? Or their parents didn't give them lunch money. Some of these kids are raising themselves. I'm just going to be real with you. Mom and dad are not there because they're working all the time because they have to pay the bills. So some of these kids that I talk to in these schools, they're raising themselves. There's no one at home to tell them to do their homework. There's no one at home to tell them it's your bedtime. It's time to go to sleep. So a lot of times the kids would come into school, the parent either couldn't give them lunch money or forgot to give them lunch money. And so as the school administrators, you still have to feed them. Like you can't just be like, oh, sorry, you don't get to eat today. So what they would do, at least at one of the schools that I was at, they would basically let them, it's like credit, right? So you get to eat your lunch, they take your name and put it on a little pad. So you owe that money back to the school. That's another thing that should change. Just make school lunch free. Come on, it's not the best food. Let's be real. You should see what the kids get to eat for lunch in France and Germany. You should see what their lunch looks like. It's actual real food. John said in Chicago, they have closed over 50% of public schools in Black neighborhoods. They have built and upgrade schools in white neighborhoods. Yep. You guys see why the property taxes funding public schools is a problem? If the people in the neighborhood don't really own anything. Sebastian said, what's sad is that many of these school lunches are made by the same one who makes meals for prisons. Schools equals prisons in the USA. It's true. It's true. I was never really a fan of school lunch, man. I'm not going to lie. That fake pizza that tastes like cardboard. Eric said West Virginia approved charter schools for 2024, I think. The public system was already FUBAR. What will happen after the charter schools take the best and brightest and then fund based on testing? This is where this is why this is a problem. Like, this is a big problem. We need to make sure we're giving everybody a decent education in this country. And it shouldn't matter if you're poor, if you're middle class, if you're working class, if you're wealthy. It should not matter. Everybody should receive a decent education. Sabby Sab, Where to Invade Next shows French school kids eating in the cafeteria and Norwegian prison. Maybe I did see that. Is it Michael Moore? I think it was a Michael Moore documentary. So maybe that is where I did see that. I know I saw that on TV. But in Germany, I have that from experience because I lived in Germany. And we went to visit the German schools. So I saw what they had for lunch. They weren't eating no cardboard pizza. They had real food. Real food. Yes, Cryptician, public school fake pizza. It's bad. It's so bad. Oh my God, that pizza's gross, man. John said, I grew up on the far south side of Chicago. The Black people there own their homes. The streets have the same potholes when I was a child, plus more. And how much is what is the value of those homes? Because I think that's the difference. Because if you go to the wealthier suburban communities, their homes are probably worth more. I think that's a big part of the problem. It's just sad. It's just so, I just can't.